When you step into an Orthodox church, something feels different. The air is heavy with incense, the walls are covered with saints staring back at you, and the ceiling seems to stretch towards heaven itself. But none of this is accidental. Orthodox architecture isn't just about aesthetics, it's theology in stone. It's a reflection of heaven on earth, a visible icon of the kingdom of God. But what happens when churches lose this sacred structure? What happens when they start looking more like shopping malls or concert venues? Today, we're going to break down how Orthodox architecture reflects the divine reality and why modern church buildings often fail to do the same. In the Old Testament, God's presence dwelled in the tabernacle and later in the temple. The Orthodox Church is the new fulfillment of that structure in this covenant. The iconostasis represents the Holy of Holies, where heaven and earth meet during the divine liturgy. The placement of the altar and the use of the sacred space mirror the structure of the temple, showing that worship is not just about gathering, it's about entering the presence of God. But contrast this with many modern churches. The focus is no longer on sacred space, but on functionality. The altar is replaced by a stage, the iconostasis is removed entirely, and the entire concept of holy ground is lost. Worship is reduced to performance, and the church building becomes little more than an auditorium. Many Orthodox churches are designed in the shape of a ship. This isn't just artistic, it's theological. The church is the ark of salvation, guiding believers through the storm of life. The ceilings, often curved like the hull of a ship, remind us that we are on a journey toward the kingdom. But in the modern church architecture, this meaning is lost. Many buildings are designed for efficiency rather than symbolism. There is no sense of being carried towards God, only of being entertained in the present moment. Orthodox churches are built to draw the soul upward. The high domes, soaring ceilings, and towering iconography reminds us that we are being lifted out of the world and into the presence of God. The pantocrator in the dome reminds us that Christ reigns from heaven. Compare this with the modern churches, where the ceilings are often flat, low, and uninspiring. Instead of drawing the soul to God, the space feels purely functional. Worship becomes centered on human activity rather than divine encounter. When you enter an Orthodox church, you are not alone. The saints surround you, reminding you that worship is not just an earthly gathering, but a participation in the heavenly liturgy. Icons are not just decoration. They are windows into eternity, showing us the reality of the kingdom of God. Now compare this to churches that have removed sacred imagery altogether. The walls are barren, the sense of divine presence is missing, and the congregation is left with nothing but themselves. In trying to avoid idolatry, they have created a space that feels empty and disconnected from the spiritual world. Orthodox churches are designed for the human voice.
Паче же сам себе предаяша за мирский живот, прием хлеб во святые свои пречистые непорочные руки, благодарив, благословив, осветив, преломив, даде святым своим ученикам и апостолам рек.
The architecture amplifies chant naturally, creating a sense of awe. The absence of musical instruments emphasizes purity of worship, mirroring the angelic choirs. But in many modern churches, worship has been transformed into a concert. Instead of sacred hymnody, there is loud music, artificial amplification, and a performance-driven atmosphere. The focus shifts from reverence to entertainment. The structure of an Orthodox church reflects the journey of the soul. The narthex represents the world. The nave is the church on earth, and the sanctuary is the kingdom of heaven. This movement reminds us that worship is a pilgrimage towards divine union. Many modern churches eliminate the structure entirely. There is no distinction between the sacred and the profane. Everything is flattened, making worship feel less like a journey and more like a casual gathering. It wasn't always this way. Even after the Reformation, many Protestant churches retained a sense of sacred architecture. But over time, modernism, utilitarianism, and secularism stripped churches of their meaning. Today, many church buildings look like office spaces, theaters, old restaurants, and shopping malls. This loss of sacred architecture reflects a deeper loss of sacred theology. When we no longer believe in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, when we reduce worship to a mere gathering rather than an encounter with God, our buildings follow suit. Architecture shapes worship. When a church reflects the divine order, it naturally fosters reverence, humility, and a sense of transcendence. But when it is stripped of meaning, worship becomes casual, entertainment-driven, and man-centered. The loss of sacred architecture is not just an aesthetic issue, it's a theological crisis. If you've never stepped inside an Orthodox church, I encourage you to experience it for yourself. Witness the beauty, the depth, and the sacred presence that has been preserved for over 2,000 years, because the way we build our churches reflects what we believe about God, and in Orthodoxy, we believe that heaven is truly among us.